on a fundamental level, all we have is our attitude and our feelings that come with that attitude. How you implement that attitude on a daily basis ultimately makes up your life. What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of The Morning Takeaway. And on today's podcast, I kind of want to reflect on the past week and then give you some kind of quotes that I've been reflecting on as well. And a few of them have to do with what I was doing the past, week or so. I was in Nashville. And if you recall from the last podcast, I was talking about death and the experience that I was having with that perspective with my grandfather and his situation. So I actually was in Nashville. I was supposed to come home, and then we thought he was getting worse. Turns out he had COVID and just another diagnosis, but he's actually in really good spirits. I ended up flying up to Detroit to see him and just sat and talked with him and really spent some quality time. And I've kind of been absent of social media and just my consistent daily posting, but I think with things in life, like life happens, and in moments like this, it's super important to take the idea of presence and dive into it as fully as possible, right? And kind of put everything else on the back burner, right? Like, this is something that's important to me, someone who is important to me, and it was really a unique experience to go and have a conversation with him, get his mental mindset. And if you're not familiar with what was going on, he got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He's got a timeline basically of, whatever the timeline is that presents itself. But basically, coming to grips with the end of his life. And whenever that time comes, it, to me, feels a little bit more peaceful, especially after spending this time with him. And I shared with you a few quotes and his love for nature in the last episode of the podcast. But today I want to I'm going to actually go through my journal, and I wrote down some quotes that I've just been reflecting on, not necessarily to do with all of the hoopla that I've been going through, or not going through, but experiencing, right? It's I don't want this to come off as a negative connotation, because it truly is beautiful in the way that, one, he is handling it, two, the support that he has, and just the perspective and life and the meaning that comes with it all, right? So I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. It's part of life, and it happens to us all. So, and it's about how we respond to it, right? And I feel fortunate that in the circumstances that there is, what's the word for it? An opportunity to say goodbye. You kind of know what's going on, and I'll reflect some of those in some of the quotes that he used. But before I drop, I think I'm going to go through 7 quotes here. I've got 4 on my piece of paper that I wrote down while I was with him, and then 3. So 7. Like I said, the last 3 aren't really anything crazy to do with my grandfather, but I do want to reflect on the 4 that were really powerful to me. And before I get going, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts on whatever quotes maybe that you'll take away, or if you have a quote that you enjoy or live by and think about when you wake up. Like, that's the kind of stuff that actually initially got me going into just the whole journey of mental health and self-care. I have been exchanging quotes with my aunt, who I got to see on Sunday, since I was probably, I can't even tell you, 12 years old, maybe earlier than that, and just the impact she's had on me in the mentality world, right? So anyways, and then and if you're watching these videos and you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. I think I said that, and hit the bell icon. It helps me out if you're the first one to see the videos when they come out. So enough with the YouTube sales pitch. Let's get into some deep stuff. But basically, as the story goes, I'm at my grandfather's house, and within sitting down with him, he's an Englishman. I sat down with him while the World Cup was going on, and England was playing Senegal, I think, but just full of life. They scored, I think, 2 goals within the first 10 minutes that I was there, 30 minutes that I was there, And after the second goal, he jumped out of his seat, and he's very fragile right now, obviously, as you can imagine, and very weak, but gets up yelling, screaming at the TV, just so excited. And just to see that, it's the little things that matter in life, right? So, but within the first 10 minutes, we're literally having a deep conversation, and we dove right into it. And I want to share with you on the piece of paper that I actually went and wrote some quotes down. I think I actually have a few on my phone. Let me look really quick. But I was trying to keep, the moment present. I do have a couple here. So maybe I'll add to the 7 quotes, but let's just dive into it. So one of the first things that we kind of were talking about, and I asked how he was feeling mentally about it all, and one of his first answers was, "I feel very at peace with it. It is sort of beautiful because all I have left is my feelings and how I control my feelings. I have the easy things. When that magical day comes, and throughout my days until then, each sip of water, every bird I see, they all become a little more magical." He paused and we reflected on it a little, and he says, a little bit later, he says, "You asked me earlier how I feel mentally about it all. I truly think it's a blessing to know that the time is coming." So we'll use that as our first quote, and I just want to reflect on that in the sense that the idea that he says, all I have left is my feelings. Well, I got to thinking about that a little later, and in a sense, every day that we wake up, that's really all we have, is our feelings, is our body. And it's like he says, the easy things. The easy things are all around us. They're waking up, showing up, brushing our teeth, from any level of whatever. I don't even know where I want to go with this, but on a fundamental level, all we have is our attitude and our feelings that come with that attitude, right? You get to choose one attitude, and how you implement that attitude on a daily basis ultimately makes up your life. And I thought that was really cool just to hear him say that and just reflect on the little things that, right, he says, when that magical day comes, until then, each sip of water, every bird I see. He's so into nature, and like I said in that previous podcast, that he says that he will get to live to see another spring, and he's so full of life and natural. He loves nature, and actually he said, every bird I see, and I asked him, because he wants to come back as a bird. I said, if you did come back as a bird, what bird would you come back as? And he said, something that soars. He didn't give me an example, but interesting. So next quote I've got, I asked him the question, I said, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone if you went tomorrow? He stopped and he thought about it, and he's in this time where he's just kind of taking deep breaths as he thinks about and articulates his words. And it was a very short answer. And he says, and I quote, "Be wary of your own anger." And I'm going to come back to that because there's another part to this quote. And we'll use this kind of as quote number 3. But basically, someone asked him while we were there and asked him again how he was feeling. And this was a different day. And he said, I have been angry for so much of my life, but I am not angry anymore. It is a beautiful thing when you, sooner or later, finally find yourself. And that freaking smacked me. I think that is so powerful. Here's an 84-year-old man that is able to admit his, vulnerabilities. And the next quote is actually touching on this as well, but it's also a sign that it's truly never too late to find yourself. And if you're going through something, whoever you are out there, whether it's very minuscule, whether it's feels very large and heavy on your plate, it's really and truly never too late to take a step in looking yourself in the mirror, or in finding yourself, or starting on your own journey to that mental clarity and that idea of a new life, right? And here he is on his, like last few months of his life, maybe years, hopefully years, that he's able to say, basically find a new life, find a new him, and find gratitude in these small little things, and be able to say sorry and forgive and just come to grips with what truly matters in this moment. So I thought that was super powerful. We'll move on to the next quote. Quote number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, let's go. Here we go. The next quote is, a lot of people don't know how or when they will die. I know all of those things. There comes a point where it is easier to find peace and acceptance in yourself. And kind of to reflect on the last quote, that's also super powerful to me. There's an idea and gratitude that he's carrying with him in this perspective on death, that he's able to find peace and acceptance in not only himself and reflecting back on his life, but in the idea that what he has left is beautiful. And I have this whole thing that like I wish that we could live this perspective and this attitude every single day of our life, right? To wake up and feel that gratitude. And it's so hard to do, and it's easier said than done. But if there's even a moment of each day that we can take a step back, take a breath, and say, wow, I get to live this day, and choose that attitude, and take a perspective into that day of excitement, and as if it was your last day, right? And it's just that this kind of stuff fires me up, because there's so much power and perspective in it, in the sense that whatever perspective I might have, it might hit somebody else, whoever hears this out there. You might think and relate this in some completely other way, and that is what's so cool about the whole idea of mental health and mindset and that creative deep thought, I guess. And that's my hope for this, right? And my hope for my whole podcast. And once we start getting people on and getting a little more deep dive into this thing, we'll expand on more perspectives, which will be fun. But for now, it's like I always say, if someone was able to get on a microphone and a camera and change my life and say something so powerful to change my life and spark something within me and ignite that fire, then I hope that I can do somewhat of the same thing for someone out there and have some kind of impact, right? So moving on to the next quote, he was telling a story on his time in the hospital. He spent 12 days in the hospital, and he was just talking about how great the workers were and wheeling him to a new appointment every other minute. And he'd spend 5 minutes with these people and find out so much. And here's a person who, as I said earlier, said that he was so angry for much of his life, and that he's now able to come to grips with it and move on, right? And he was talking about this hallway story and being wheeled around in the hallways by the doctors, and he says, and I quote, "Through my own vulnerabilities, it is amazing what the hell you can learn about people. Just when you think you have problems, you can find peace." And I don't know if end quote right there, but I don't know if I've said to anybody on here, but my goal is to write a book on vulnerability. And the first book that I ever write is going to be on it. There's a whole nother topic that I'm going to write this book on and tie the vulnerability aspect into it. And that's going to be a whole crazy story to come out with one day. I don't know if you remember in my Would You Rather video, but I left some kind of suspense there about a story basically about my life that I will come out with one day when the time is right. But it's, again, so powerful to me to hear that an 84-year-old man is sitting here coming to grips with the idea that asking questions and being vulnerable himself, he's realizing at 84 years old what you can learn about people and how powerful their stories can be and what they might be experiencing or have gone through or whatever, right? And I think that's so applicable to this platform and what I'm trying to do in my life, essentially, and have some kind of impact, as I alluded to. It's so powerful to hear other people's stories and to be able to express your own and put yourself in that vulnerable position to open yourself to connection with others. And that's where I think the power of vulnerability lies within. And it's special to me to hear him say at 84 years old that he can realize that he can be vulnerable. And again, it's never too late to do that. I think that's with any conversation. You go ask a random person a question a day. Make that a challenge for yourself. Go ask somebody new a new question every day. Learn about somebody and just take in and be a good listener and hear their stories, right? It's truly powerful what you can learn about somebody else. Moving on, we're going to kind of get through these last few questions or these few quotes pretty quick. They're pretty short, but I'll just give a little takeaway from each one. But he says, and I quote, "I love nature so much. I just want to be alive to see another spring." So that was the quote from the last one. That one's powerful. He loves talking. He loves seeing the baby ferns. That's his favorite thing. Or the geese flying over the house. Or just the idea of nature and life and how complex it is, and that we're not really the only things in this world that are experiencing, right? It's a beautiful thing. So next quote, and these three are not from my grandfather, but just something I was thinking about and wanted to write down and share today. And hopefully if one of the quotes that I've said hasn't hit you, maybe one of these will. But first quote is, quote unquote, you can never be fully present until you are proud of your presence. And just my takeaway on that one is, I think the idea of being present is truly living, but I think being proud of your own presence is doing those little things that I talk about each and every single day to grow and feel the gratitude of life so that you can be present and feel good in your own skin. And again, something that I want from my platform is to push that on people, to feel good in your own skin. You don't have to look like somebody else. You don't have to live somebody else's life. It's truly every day about you feeling good in your own skin. And that to me is something special when you can get to that point in your life. Next quote before the last quote, it's quote unquote, "It's not how you live your day, it is how you start your day." I find power in the morning routines, and I think this relates to the last quote and being proud of your presence. There's something in me that gets so excited about the morning hours, and I don't check my phone unless I'm just taking a quick Snapchat at 4:30 in the morning to put on Instagram on my story, just to show, the daily practices that I live. But how you start your day is how you ultimately set the tone, right? And your intention for that day and how you live it. And if you can start every day in a clear mind, headspace, you can have a great day. And when you start to put 7 good days together in a row, that adds up to quite a beautiful life, right? So last quote, "A human being is not one in pursuit of happiness, but rather in search of a reason to be happy." I read that in my book. I'm reading A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, Auschwitz, 4 different concentration camps, and he talks a lot about suffering. And I think that's a good way to wrap this podcast up, because if you can experience suffering and look at that idea as a way to grow and look at it as a part of life, even in the most extreme circumstances, then you can truly, truly, truly find, I don't want to say happiness because I think that's a more complex topic, but fulfillment. And we're not always in the pursuit of happiness because that feels too broad. What is the pursuit of happiness? Like, how do we get that more on a fundamental level? Well, he says it is finding a reason to be happy. And I think if to connect all these last three quotes, how you start your day, or, you know, just that overall pride of your own presence, it can tie into having one little reason each day to accomplish something. And I always talk about it. If you can set something on your to-do list and check that thing off and say, hey, I did this when I said I was going to do it, and then cross that thing off, you're seriously building self-confidence with yourself. And to me, that is a reason to be happy. And I think we could all, again, take each one of these quotes, that quote, anything, and have a different perspective on it. And I love that. If you have some kind of feedback for me on any of these quotes, I would love to hear it in the comments. I'll be responding to your comments as usual, and now, especially now that I'm back and not traveling as much for the next, I guess, 12 days until the holidays. But man, I love this kind of stuff, just talking, getting deep. So let me know if there was something I said that sparks interest, impact, whatever on you, and I would be happy to have a conversation in the comments. But let's end this thing with a random question I just generated here on my handy dandy random word generator. So what country sounds interesting but you know very little about? First one that's coming to my mind is like Iceland. I don't know, it just seems very beautiful, very remote, and I don't know much about the people or what's there, but gosh, I would love to just go explore. One day I'm just gonna put everything into storage unit and live in a different country every month and document it, or live in my car on a tent and go to every national park and document every workout, every national park hike. I don't know, I got a lot of ideas. That's not technically a country, but anyways, that's my answer for that. Hope you were able to take something away and maybe find some kind of purpose in this podcast, and I hope you took something away. I think I just said that like 17,000 times. But anyways, I appreciate you tuning in as always. I appreciate you for subscribing, following along with my content. I will have a video out this Sunday. I'm actually in the middle of a 48-hour fast, and I'm trying to cut down at least 5 pounds in 3 days. So I'm gonna have my first meal tonight. I'm documenting it all, but stay tuned for that video and the many videos to come. I will see you next time. Have an awesome freaking day, and don't forget to smile.